I'm a big Paul Newman fan. Favorite actor. So when I was 15, I saw the movie The Hustler for the first time and thought, that's the life for me. So my older brothers and I, we had played a little bit of pool, and I couldn't drive. We started going to the pool hall 5 days a week. We used to go to the Q Club in the commercial center. But after 2 years in there, after I saw somebody try to smash somebody else in the head with a jackhammer, I switched pool halls. And I went to Qtopia. Because it sounded more peaceful on Twain and Swenson. And you remember your firsts. I remember the first time I saw somebody try to hustle at the Q Club. It was two guys doing a whole bit. I'm on the road selling prescription drugs. I'm just in town and blah, blah, blah. And they had a couple of squares beside them, and they managed to beat them out of $40, $50. And I thought to myself, you know what? It's time. I mean, it's just time. I've been playing a couple of years. It's time to hustle. Now, hustling and cheating it's really the same thing. I mean, you're cheating somebody. It's larceny by deception. But you're not really picking on the squares. Let me describe the pool hall to you. The bar is raised and it's shaped like a horseshoe. So when you walk in on the left side of the room, you have what we call the squares. Guys out after work having a beer, shooting a little bit of pool. Maybe a guy in there with a date, college kids. The owners didn't want you picking on them because they were the bread and butter. They were going to spend money. Everybody else on the other side of the pool hall, like me, was trying to fuck everybody out of money. So we weren't going to spend any money. So then in the back room, you had sort of the younger guys. We weren't pros, but we had a little bit of an edge to us, and we always came prepared to win money. And then on this side of the room here, you had the pros that you used to stare at and used to think like, you know, when you were younger, you used to think like, wow, what a great guy. And then you get a little older and you're like, this guy's he's a terrible guy. But I wanted to be those guys. I wanted to build up to the big con. So it starts small. Now when you're hustling, you're not picking on the squares. You're looking for guys. You're trying to find the guy that's trying to cheat you out of your money. And as soon as I would find the guy trying to cheat me out of my money, my first thought used to be, you're trying to cheat me out of my money? I'm going to cheat you out of your money. I'm going to teach you a lesson. You're a cheater? I'll show you how to cheat. So you would wait and you would work these guys, and it would take sometimes weeks, and it would start with small bets. You would do word games. I would bet guys I could do between 300 and 400 push-ups in under 2 minutes, and then I would get down and do 4 push-ups because it's between 300 and 400 push-ups. Well, I bet a guy one time that I could throw a pumpkin on the roof of the pool hall, but when I showed up with one of those little mini pumpkins you get at the grocery store, he just paid me. He didn't even make me throw it on there. So you had these little hustles that you wanted to do. Now, I had a guy in there. Everybody's got, when you get a guy on the hook, that's your fish. I had a couple of fish. There was one guy named Action. I won't say his first name. I'll just say we called him Action because that's what he was good for. And I was convinced that he hated Jews. So I felt if I was Simon Wiesenthal and in the pool hall, I would try to fuck him out of his Nazi money. So I began to play him off every day, 20 and 40 a day. Now the way you hustle is you lie about how good you are in the game and you get an edge, or maybe you work a guy into believing that you can't make an incredibly hard shot. I mean, these things take hours. After about 2-3 weeks of 20, 40 a day, he was tightening up. He wouldn't play anymore. The truth was, the time before that, he had no money, but he hated me so much that he walked across the pool hall and sold his watch to have money to play me, and I promptly took it from him. So I decided I needed the long con. I wanted to really work this guy. So it's another story, but somehow I got into business with a guy that was a wrestling promoter. And he had, another night, and he had told me that Hulk Hogan was about to lose the title this coming Saturday. They had it all plotted out. I don't know if I'm exposing anything, but wrestling's, it's fixed. He had told me that Hulk Hogan was going to lose the title, and then in 3 months he would win it back. He was going to lose to a wrestler named Sting. So I knew that Action was a big wrestling guy. So now when you set something up, I mean, you set it up 2-3 days before you walk in the pool hall. You got to know your beats. You got to have somebody across the pool hall to yell out information as if they don't know you. You've really got to work a guy. I'm in the pool hall. I'm there for a good 4 hours. He won't gamble with me anymore. I let it go for like 2 hours peaceful. About the 3rd hour, I start to kick in and get a little rough, and we start to wolf at each other. When you wolf at a guy in the pool hall, you try to test his manhood. You say things like, come on, man. You wouldn't bet you were breathing if I gave you a mirror to check first. Or, you know, what'd you come here to play for pride? Go to the boys club, man. I play for cash in here. Boys club, you get pride. You really got to push a guy. So I finally had it where I wanted him. He wanted to gamble, but he didn't want to get down with me. And I said, well, what is it he likes? I mean, what do you like? I'm willing to lose money to you just to get you back on board. What do you like? You're a wrestling fan, right? And he said, yeah. And I said, what's the next match coming up? This poor schmuck who I had in the ball waiting 4 hours for me to yell out, what's the next wrestling match coming up? And he yells, Hulk Hogan versus Sting. And I go, who said that? Some guy raised, I go, who's the champion? He goes, Hulk Hogan. I said, I'll give you Hulk Hogan. I'll bet you 500 right now, just to prove that I don't think you got the balls to get down. There's a pause. I got him on the hook. And the bartender, who I will say his name, John Perry, this fucking moron, doesn't miss a beat and staring at the whole thing goes, Mike wants to bet on wrestling. He probably knows the promoter. Guy gets up, walks out. Now, I get into my 20s, I start to play more poker, and I realize maybe the long con is just not for me. But the guys on the right side of the room that I talked about earlier, these guys were the guys, you know. And I'm not going to say their names because I want to protect the storyteller. So we'll call these guys A and B, or 1 and 2. That's how I'll refer to them. They were always in there, and I'd watch these guys. They would come in with hustles. You know, they'd have teams, but like there'd be 2 guys you recognize on one team and 1 guy you didn't recognize on the other team. And that's because the 3rd guy was partnered with them and they were just robbing him. It was beyond cheating. And they were beating guys out of 40, 50,000. It was crazy what they were doing. So cut 2 years later, because this is, you're talking about 92, 93. I moved to LA eventually. I'm an actor, which is a great way to cheat the system because I'm not smart enough to be a lawyer, but I can play one on TV. You know what I mean? I get to do all the things that I'm not educated enough to do, but because I can play an action, sometimes people pay me to do it. So I'm in Los Angeles, and I'm in the poker room, I'm in the Commerce, and I sit down at the table with one of the guys, guy number 2, or B. And he is at the table, and I think to myself, the first thing I think to myself is, shit, this game's fixed. I'm going to lose all my money. They got to be cheating. And then over comes guy A, and hey, you had a kid from the pool hall 10 years ago, and blah, 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 and you go through it a little bit. There's always like a pedigree moment that you got to go through with these guys. You got to answer like 6 questions, and this other guy, he takes an interest in me, and he starts to mention, you know Mexican Freddy? Yeah, I know Mexican Freddy, but he's Italian, blah, blah, blah. So you got to go down the lineage of who you know, and so forth and so on, you know, and you do all that. Finally, we're sitting at the table, and these guys do the long con. I had heard they were in LA. I'd heard they were snapping off studio heads and big-time actors for 6 figures. So he says, well, you know, guy A tells me you're a good kid. I said, yeah. And I mean, I always wanted the big con. I always wanted to be part of it. He goes, well, let me ask you a question. Let's say I told you my brother was a blackjack dealer, and my father was the pit boss, and my wife was the eye in the sky. How much money would you bet on that blackjack table? I said, well, I bet everything in my pocket. I feel pretty confident we're going to do well. He goes, well, look, you come with me and guy A, we sit at the table, boom, boom, boom. All you got to do is play your cards. A few things are going to happen. You don't got to worry about anything, and we'll cut you in. I said, you know, I appreciate it. I'm a little older now, not the path I want to take. There was a time when, my God, I would have jumped at this, but I said, you know, I gotta pause. He goes, well, what are you worried about? Are you a nervous kid? I'm like, yeah. I mean, I'm an Italian Jew. I mean, you know, I have 6 hours of required nervousness every week. I mean, like, yeah. So now he starts to get off the subject, and he's giving me the pedigree again. You remember so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. He got shot in his driveway. I'm like, yeah, I remember when that happened. Well, I was in jail when that happened. You brought it up. I wasn't accusing you. Like, I don't... like, you got me scared when you sat down. You know, so he keeps going. He's really pushing me. Listen, here's the thing. We got everybody on the payroll. We got Los Angeles police. You're worried about... What are you worried about? We'll come in. They'll fake an arrest. They'll take you away. Nobody ever knows. Don't worry about it. What's your problem? What are you worried? Why are you being such a chicken shit? I said, let me put it to you this way. I'm an actor, and I'm fortunate enough to do well. I get to be on TV now and then, and it's flattering. It's a nice way to make a living, and it's safer. My problem is, we sit in a poker game, and you're snapping off some guy over here, and you're asking me to do either nothing just by sitting there, or maybe it's certainly not alert anybody of what's going on, and we beat this guy out of 80, 90,000, I take my cut, everybody goes their separate ways, you guys go on the road, this guy goes back to his hotel, he turns on the TV, and he wants to know why that fucking kid in the peanut commercial just fucked him out of $90,000. I take a little more exposure than you. This makes sense to him. He pauses, he looks at me, and he says, I got 40,000 Viagra. I say, okay, and he goes, I'm just saying, you don't want to come help us out in the game, let me know if you know somebody that needs 40,000 Viagra. I said, if I know somebody that needs a heart on that bat, I'll give you a call. Thank you.